Yoga for healthy range of movement. Hi, this is Ruben Vasquez with this sequence that offers you an exploration of range of movement in all the joints in the body, relationships between different joints, and interactions between your shoulder girdle, your pelvic girdle, and your spine. As usual, practice without any strain, without any struggle, with no self-judgment, and with a smile on your face and in your heart. Breathe comfortably with continuous and fluid inhalations and exhalations without any forcing. Of course, part of the practice is to enjoy it. Namaste. Start lying down on your back on the floor, allowing everything to be soft and relaxed. Just noticing the sensations in your body. Notice how busy or calm your mind is. Notice what attitude you have right now. Let go of any unnecessary tension or holding. Taking time to allow everything to settle and to give yourself permission to be fully here. Interlace your fingers and rest the back of your head on your hands, trying to direct breath into your upper torso, into the collarbones, the shoulder blade area, the armpits, without forcing, noticing if it might be possible to get your breath to move these upper torso areas. Breathing with ease and without forcing. Then slide your hands to rest on your rib cage and see if you can modulate your breath to try to create a little bit of movement in your rib cage now as you breathe in and out. There is no need to force. Just exploring with curiosity what you do to try to move your rib cage as you breathe. Then rest your hands on your lower abdomen and try to see what happens when you inhale and exhale, creating movement in the lower abdomen and lower back. One of these three ways of breathing may feel more familiar to you than the others. Now try to create a nice and very comfortable way of breathing. You don't even need to take deep breaths. Just breathe with ease. Open the arms out to the sides into a straight line. Rest the backs of the hands and fingernails on the floor if that is possible. Notice how this feels. And then slowly start to move the finger pads towards the palm of your hand a little bit. And then let the fingernails move towards the floor. And each time move your fingers a little bit more towards the palm of your hands. Feeling this. Notice that you can do this very gently, very softly, but you can also do it more intensely. Then start lifting also the back of the hand away from the floor, flexing at the wrist. Try this a few times. You regulate how much movement you do and what intensity you do it with. Keep your breath smooth, lifting the back of the hand away from the floor and then returning the fingers to the floor. And then start lifting the forearms but keeping the elbows on the floor. Notice how much movement is available to try to bring the fists towards the front of the shoulders. Sometimes you move all the way there. Sometimes you move less. It's an exploration of range of movement. So feeling, noticing, Can you match your movements to your breath? Make this as easy as possible, effortless. And then lift the elbows at the end of that movement, the elbows towards the ceiling. And try to explore. What does it take to create this whole movement that combines fingers, wrists, elbows, and shoulders? How are your shoulder blades moving with this movement? Feeling. Making this easy sometimes a little bit more intense, but never forcing. Just curious to feel as clearly as possible. And then lift the whole arm all the way up, and maybe the hands come close to each other. And then open your arms out to the sides all the way to the floor again. Explore this movement and notice how this is different because the articulation is happening only at the shoulder blade and collarbone areas, whereas the elbows, wrists, and fingers are not articulating, not moving. They're moving through space. Notice the sensations. Make this as easeful as possible. Then pause with the palms of the hands facing the same direction as the crown of your head. And then start flexing your elbows so that the fingertips come towards the top of your shoulders. From there, explore circles with your elbows. From tiny circles, gradually widening. Maybe making each circle a little bit different from the previous one. Noticing and trying to avoid pinching, trying to avoid grinding at the shoulders, making this movement as smooth as possible. Breathing naturally, then pause and explore reversing the movement. And maybe you start with larger circles and gradually you decrease the size of the circles, noticing how the sensations are changing. Different muscle fibers and maybe even different muscles are engaged when we create these movements. So be curious to notice, how does this work in your body? Steady and fluid breath. Noticing what makes things harder and what makes things easier for you. Then pause. Lift the fingertips all the way up towards the ceiling. And from there, palms of the hands facing the direction the soles of your feet are pointing. And then bring one arm back and one arm down by the pelvis. Alternating. One arm reaches up and back and the other reaches forward and down. Notice the sensations. Notice how this is lengthening one side of your torso and shortening the other side. See if you want to increase the action and make it more distinct on each side. Notice the connections between these arm movements and your torso, as well as relationships to your neck. Noticing sensations, and then maybe turning your head opposite the arm that is going back. There might be differences between one side and the other. Do only what you can without any forcing. Notice if turning the head creates any difference in the lengthening of the one side of the torso and the shortening of the other side. Keep the movement elegant and exquisite, enjoying what you're doing. Pause with the arms vertical and then slowly rest your arms on the floor. Take a moment to feel the effects of what you just did. Then interlace your fingers, flex your knees so that the soles of your feet are on the floor, And then start trying to bring your forehead and one elbow towards the opposite hip joint. Now go all the way back and then try the other side. Notice how it feels to do this. One elbow towards the opposite hip joint, alternating sides, making this very slow and deliberate. Noticing the sensations. Doing only as much as feels appropriate for you. One side may feel a little bit easier than the other, so notice if there are differences between the sides. And when you return to the floor, straighten the legs, straighten the arms, relax. Maybe there is a smile on your face. Feeling the effects. Is your body temperature different? Is there any agitation in your mind, in your body, in your breath? Then, see if it makes sense to point the toes towards the ceiling and then to try to spread your toes. And then try to bring them closer together. Do this a few times, feeling. And then point both sets of toes to one side and to the other, noticing how this may create some effect on your legs. And maybe even the pelvis, side to side, making this as easeful as possible. Then pause at center, point the toes away from your pelvis and towards your shoulders, alternating, and notice how this feels along your legs. What parts are involved when you do this? What options do you have for level of intensity? And relax. Flex one knee towards your chest without using your arms. You can have the other knee flex and the sole of the foot on the floor or the leg straight on the floor. Start circling the foot at the ankle for that knee that is closer to your chest. Try a few rounds and then try the other direction. Make this simple and easy, changing the size of the circles every time. Then pause and be curious about what happens when you lift the leg up. Maybe pointing the toes and then pointing the heel and then flexing at the knee, bringing the heel towards the pelvis. And try doing this movement a few times, lifting and flexing. Notice how hard or easy this might be for you today. Notice the sensations. Keep the movements fluid, smooth. Notice how when you do this a few times, it may feel different. And then try to bring your knee a little bit to one side, to center, and to the other side. Exploring the movement, side to side, keeping the back of the pelvis on the floor. Making this easy. Noticing sensations, making sure that nothing creates discomfort. There is no grinding or pinching at the joint. Then pause at center. As best as you can, start circling your knee gradually. Explore different size circles, noticing how that feels, making each circle a little bit different from the previous one in size and maybe in muscular engagement. Observing and breathing. And then pause and try the other direction. Curious to notice if there are sensations that are different when you go in the other direction. It may feel more or less familiar. Stay with steady, natural breath. And then pause. Straighten the leg and notice how you feel. Are there differences between one side of your body and the other? Now try flexing the other knee towards your chest. Don't use your arms, just what the leg can do. And start circling this foot at the ankle. What are the different options, different choices you have for moving your foot in circles on this side? And it may feel different on this side. Try the other direction and notice how this creates movement in other places of your body, probably. Observing and breathing, and then pause. And notice what happens when you lift the leg up, pointing the toes, pointing the heel, then flexing the knee. And try this in different variations. Sometimes you lengthen the leg more, sometimes less. Sometimes you flex the leg more, and sometimes you flex it less. Pointing the toes, pointing the heel, noticing how that feels different. Observing the next time you flex your knee, go from center over to one side and then to the other. Gradually widening the movement, but keeping it easy. Feeling side to side. Keep the back of the pelvis pressed towards the floor if that is possible. Make sure that this does not create discomfort or pain. Then pause at center and explore now a circle. So notice that the head of your thigh bone is rotating in the hip socket. And notice that this side may be much easier, or it may feel more natural, or the movement may feel less clear or less familiar. Doing what you can without forcing at all. And then trying to change the circles each time. Pause. And then notice what happens when you change direction. How does that feel? Keep the movements smooth and as fluid as you can keep them. Observing the sensations, enjoying where you are with this, doing what is possible. Then pause. Keep your breath flowing with ease. Straighten the leg on the floor and notice the effects. Comparing sides. Flex the knees, soles of the feet on the floor. And then bring your knees over to one side, to center, and to the other side. Maybe the arms go out to the side into a straight line, palms of the hands facing down. So notice the connection between these leg movements and the rest of your spine, between leg movements and the pelvis, going side to side. Notice how this may feel in your shoulder girdle, in the shoulder blades, collarbones, arms, side to side. Observing and making this as easeful as possible. It may be easier to do the movement in one direction than the other. Pause with the legs over to one side, and as best as you can, try to turn your head from one side to the other very gently. So noticing the relationship between your head, your neck, the shoulders, and the rest of the spine. Making the movements very deliberate. Just exploring what is possible for you today, what feels good, what helps to locate some existing tension. Then pause. Bring the legs back to center and over to the other side. And then pause at a place that seems comfortable. And then gradually start exploring movement of the head, turning from one side to the other. Making the movements as smooth and easeful as possible. Feeling your face is relaxed, your jaw relaxed, your soft palate relaxed. Your breath flowing without any abruptness. enjoying where you are with this. Comparing this side with the other side, return the head to center, return the knees to center. And notice how you feel. We're always trying to pay attention to the effects of what we are doing. Now, bring the fingertips towards the tops of the shoulders, flexing the elbows and pointing them up. Maybe they are shoulder distance apart. Flex the knees, lift the feet off the floor, and knees hip distance apart. Start circling your elbows and your knees. And notice what comes natural to you for these circles. Feeling. Trying to vary the size of the circle, see if that is possible. And then change directions. And notice how that feels for you. Observing and breathing. Making this as smooth as you can. Then try to vary the movement. So if you were moving everything in the same direction, what happens if elbows and knees are circling towards meeting at center? And notice if that makes sense. And try the other direction. So we're noticing the connections between the movements and also with our brain, with our mind. How do we control the size of the circles when we're moving everything at once? And then let everything go random and move however you want to move, everything in its own unplanned pattern. Notice how this feels in your mind. And then pause, straighten the legs, straighten the arms, relax. So we're moving the body, but also we're trying to massage our mind. Asking our mind to do some things and sometimes to relax as well. Soles of the feet come together, comfortable distance between your feet and your pelvis, not too close, not too far. Knees are out to the sides. Explore how much movement there is to arch your low back away from the floor and towards the floor. Make sure that this doesn't create any discomfort. Just arching and rounding, and notice that this requires for the pelvis to move and the thighs to move. Making this as easeful as possible. You can vary the intensity or the size of the movement. Then pause. Try back of the neck, moving towards the floor and arching away from the floor. Keep the head on the floor the whole time. And try to see what options you have for this movement, where the chin is pulling away from the throat and towards the floor. Observing and breathing. And then is it possible to arch low back and back of the neck away from the floor at the same time? Notice what this asks of your whole spine, your pelvis, your shoulder girdle. Trying to do this as best as you can without creating tension. Easeful. And then what happens if you try to arch one and arc the other and round the other? So the lower back can arch while the back of the neck rounds towards the floor, and then alternating and feel. Does this seem easier or more familiar for you? Creating a nice wave-like movement throughout your torso. So feeling the connection between different parts of your spine. Pause and relax. Soles of the feet flat on the floor. Press your feet down on the floor. Press the shoulder blades down on the floor. When you press the feet down on the floor, your head doesn't push back. Start lifting the tailbone, the back of the pelvis, the lower back, the mid-back, the upper back away from the floor. And sequentially upper back, mid-back, lower back, and back of the pelvis return to the floor. Try this as best as you can. Even weight on both feet if balls of the feet are pressing down against the floor. Notice if it is possible to bring the lower back to the floor before the back of the pelvis reaches the floor. Is it easier for you to do this when you inhale, lifting, or is it easier to lift when you exhale? So notice how your movements connect to your breath. Observe the sensations. You can also switch. If you were lifting up on the exhale, try lifting up on the inhale. So cultivating different options, feeling and making the movement very smooth and deliberate. Then consider lifting the arms at the same time as you lift the pelvis, reaching up and back with the arms. Maybe the hands move towards the floor, touch the floor when the pelvis is at its highest point, and then the hands on the back of the pelvis try to return to the floor at the same time. Can both hands and the pelvis lift away from the floor at the same time? Observe the sensations. And can both hands and back of the pelvis reach to the floor at once? Stay with your breath flowing without any agitation as you lift and lower. Observing. Notice if there is a tendency to lean more on one leg than the other. Lifting up, feeling the sensations. And then, what happens if you keep the arms where they are, all the way back, and then you lower the spine, upper back, mid back, lower back, and back of the pelvis to the floor. Once the pelvis is on the floor, return the arms all the way up and down by the sides of the pelvis. When you are ready, bring your thighs towards your chest without using your arms. Notice the sensations. Try to bring the thighs as close to the chest as they can without anything being forced. Feeling. Maybe the forehead moves towards the knees and the arms may go parallel to the floor. Then relax. Take a moment there and try that again. Forehead towards the thighs. Arms parallel to the floor. Then bring your feet flat to the floor. Take a moment. Continuous and easy breath. From there, open the arms to the sides, palms of the hands facing down, if that works. Bringing your knees over to one side, to center, and to the other side. Making this comfortable, easy. Observing sensations. Maybe the head rolls in the same direction as your knees. And notice if that feels in any way different from not turning the head. Observing and breathing. Synchronizing breath, movement, head. And then consider turning the head opposite your knees. And notice if that feels more comfortable or if that helps to dissolve some patterns of tension. Making the movements harmonious, side to side, feeling what is happening. Then pause at center. Roll over to one side. So you're going to be resting on your side, on the side of your pelvis. Straighten the legs and stack one leg on top of the other. Bring the forearm to the floor so that the upper arm is a little bit diagonal to meet the shoulder blade. Encouraging lengthening of the side of the torso that is closer to the floor, avoiding pushing the shoulder up or forward. Bring the other arm parallel to the legs. And then try to move your head in figure eights. See if that makes sense. The top arm, the armpit, and the hip are moving towards each other, shortening one side of the torso while the other side lengthens. And then from there, pause. And then try the other side. Roll on the other hip. Legs straight and stacked. Lengthening one side of the torso. Feeling the connection between your upper arm bone and the shoulder blade. No discomfort at the shoulder. And then the top arm parallel to the legs. Armpit towards the hip. Hip towards the armpit on that side. Shortening one side, lengthening the other side. Gentle figure eights with your head. making this easeful. Breathing and feeling, nothing forced. Change direction and notice how does that feel for you. And then pause, relax. Press the top hand on the floor. Lift one leg up a little bit. And try that. Try to see how much can you lift the leg without causing discomfort. Easeful. Notice sensations. Roll over to the other side and try that same idea. Lengthening one side of the torso, shortening the other, and trying to lift one leg up and down. Up and down the top leg, lifting. And notice how much range of movement is there. The movement is happening at that hip joint. Observing sensations. Face relaxed, eyes soft. Then pause. And then roll onto your belly. Stack your forearms on top of one another. Tops of the feet on the floor. Try as best as you can to find the right distance for your forearms from your torso, and then be curious about exploring what it feels like to press the front pelvis down to the floor, and then try to lengthen the front of the torso and lift the head up a little bit. Notice if it is easier to lift up when you breathe in or breathe out, so you can try both ways. Observing. Make sure that this doesn't feel like it is shortening or pinching your lower back. Observing the sensations. Maybe it feels like the forearms are trying to pull towards you. Bring the elbows to the floor, hands as fists, and try to lengthen the backs of the wrists as the elbows try to pull the floor towards your pelvis. Notice how this feels in your body. And then take your hands to the floor, palms on the floor, by the sides of your chest. From there, curl your toes under and come to your hands and knees as best as you can. Try to create a little bit of space under the palm of each hand or beyond the fingertips or your hands as fists, whatever works best for your wrists. And here, try to press the sit bones towards your shoulders to lengthen the low back, then the mid back, then the upper back. Shoulder blades sliding away from each other, back of the neck towards the ceiling, chin towards the throat. And then try a sequential movement of your spine in the other direction, lengthening the front of the body. Observe and breathe. And try this a couple of times. Grounding low, mid, upper back. And then shortening. Then find neutral spine. Observe sensations. Take your hands a little closer to you. And try to lengthen the low, the mid, the upper back, the back of the neck, chin towards the throat. Creating an even lengthening on the back and the back of the hips and the thighs. Make this as easeful as you can and then release it. Work your hands forward. Take a moment. Comfortable hands and wrists. Start rounding your spine and bring your pelvis towards your heels. And then come back up to hands and knees. Try this a few times. Notice the sensations. See if it is possible to keep the upper arms connected to the shoulder blades. Now bring one knee 3 or 4 inches back and round the back and bring it all the way back. Coming up and rounding back. And feel that. Observing and breathing. Now the hand on the same side as the knee that is back goes forward a little bit and you round and go back. And notice how this creates some asymmetry in your torso. Maybe one side is shortening more than the other. Then realign the hands and the opposite hand comes forward. And notice how this plays with your torso. This asks your torso to move in a different way as you reach back and forward. Then realign the hands, realign the knees. Bring the other knee a little bit back, as much as you did on the first side. Rounding and going back, and then coming up again. A few times. Feeling. Now, bring the knee back, round and go back, and notice, how does this feel now? Staying with your breath. Feeling the sensations. A few times. And then the hand on the same side goes forward a little bit. And notice how this changes the way your spine is moving, the way your torso is moving. Rounding and going back and feeling the connections between arms, shoulder blades, hips. Then realign the hands and the opposite hand goes forward a little bit. And notice again what this is asking of your spine. Maybe it is more of a spiraling action that we're asking. Feeling and breathing, observing the sensations. Realign your hands and knees. Round, low, mid, upper back, back of the neck. And go all the way back. Notice. Feeling. Can you keep this roundedness on your back body? Then come back up. Come up to your fingertips. Bring one foot forward, between your hands if possible. Come all the way up. From there, bring one forearm to rest on that front thigh. The other hand is by the side of the waist, and you lengthen the side of the waist, the rib cage, the torso, the armpit. The elbow can point away, and the arm can lengthen. So shortening the side of the torso closer to the thigh and lengthening the other side of the torso, and then return. Come up to vertical torso, round your spine, bring your hands to the floor, and then try the other foot coming forward. Torso up to vertical again. Now the other forearm comes to rest on the thigh. Keep that hip joint pressing towards the side, towards the other hip. Lengthen the waist, rib cage, torso, upper part of your torso, armpit. The elbow reaches forward so that you're not tensing the shoulder blade towards the ear. And then return. Lengthen the torso. Notice the effects. If your lower back tends to pinch, try to lengthen it a little bit. Observe sensations. And from there, as best as you can, lengthen your spine. Hands to soft belly. And start turning from the belly towards that thigh that is in front. Hands to lower ribs, turning from the ribs. Hands to the sides of the torso and then the top of the torso, moving sequentially the spine. Eventually the head is the last part that moves. Hands to the abdomen. Return from the abdomen back to center. Abdomen, lower ribs, mid ribs, torso, chest. Release the hands all the way to the floor. Bring that foot back and the other foot goes forward. From there, lengthen the spine up. Hands on the soft belly. Lengthening the spine, and then from the navel turn towards that front thigh, then from the lower ribs, then from the chest, then from the collarbones, and then from the head. The whole spine turning sequentially. Hands on the soft belly, returning from the soft belly, lower ribs, upper ribs, collarbones, shoulders. Hands come all the way down to the floor. Take a moment there, bring the foot back, knees aligned. Lengthen low, mid, upper back. Bring the tip of the nose forward and then down. Now again, bring one foot forward. Now the other foot forward. Barely touch the floor with your fingertips. Bring the chest to rest on your thighs. Front of the shoulders trying to move towards your front knees. You choose how much you flex your knees. If your chest are touching your thighs, if your shoulders are touching your knees, you can try bringing the pelvis up a little bit. Make sure that this doesn't create discomfort or pain. Lowering the pelvis down, keeping chest and thighs together. You can use the hands on the floor or not. You can keep the heels on the floor, taking a moment and noticing. Then bring your knees back. And then come all the way down to sitting on the floor. Bring the legs out in front, hands behind, lengthen the torso. Flex the knees as much as you need to. Easy breath. Trying to feel that your ribcage is coming up, breastbone up, collarbones up. Bring the heels closer to your sit bones so that you can touch your heels with your fingertips. Lengthen the front of the torso, and from there, start rounding from the navel, the spine, sequentially down to rest your chest on your thighs again. Maybe front of the shoulders coming towards the knees. Sometimes the shoulders tend to tense up, instead widen them. Take a moment here and notice the sensations. And then lengthen from the torso, front of the torso, all the way up. Take your hands behind. Try to lengthen ribcage up, breastbone up, collarbones up. Bring the soles of the feet to the floor. See how this works for you. Try to lengthen the spine, neck forward, chin up. Feeling nice elongation of your spine without anything being forced. Then head to neutral. And from there, lie all the way down onto your back. Straighten your legs on the floor, arms on the floor. Neck relaxed, face relaxed, jaw relaxed. Notice the effects of the previous actions. Notice if the temperature of your body has changed. Keep your breath steady, fluid, uninterrupted. Relax your ankles, your knees, your hip joints, your lower back and abdominal area. Relax your rib cage, your chest, your mid and upper back. Relax your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists, your hands. Let your neck be free of tension. Focus on just being here, feeling the sensations that are present. Easy and effortless breathing. Allowing yourself to be completely at ease. Letting your breath settle. Your mind might get distracted. Just feel the sensations and notice how the sensations you can experience directly are changing from one moment to the next. The sensations in the palms of your hands may be different from one hand to the other. The sensations at the soles of your feet may be different on both sides. Noticing, feeling, enjoying this moment. Completely satisfied with the way you did the practice. Remember that what you're able to do changes according to how familiar it is to you, how you slept the night before, how hydrated you are, what you have eaten, if you're tense, if you're worried, if you're calm. All of these things influence your movements, your breathing. Let yourself be relaxed. Consider bringing into your heart an image or idea or a memory that is uplifting, that gives you inspiration or hope or gratitude. And notice what happens. Remember to keep coming back to this moment, to what you're feeling, and to that uplifting emotion, no matter how many times you get distracted. Allow yourself to relax even more, everywhere. Notice how your body has found its own breathing rhythm. Notice how efficient and effortless your breath is. Savor these moments of calmness and clarity. Just being, no doing. We're always balancing our doing with our being. Slowly start moving, flexing your knees, bringing the soles of your feet to the floor, resting one hand on your chest, one hand of your lower abdomen. Notice how your breath is flowing. Notice how much or how little movement there is as you breathe. And start making your breath move your belly a little bit more without forcing, feeling what changes to expand the lower back and lower abdomen as you breathe in and out. Making this effortless, no tension. Nothing is strained. Staying focused on your deliberate inhalations and exhalations. What happens if you shift to create more movement in your ribcage as you breathe in and out. Feeling. So notice that it may be possible to regulate where your body moves as you breathe. We're trying to get better and better at doing this with the least amount of effort, with the least amount of agitation. Bring your arms to rest and come up to a comfortable seated position. Whatever is comfortable for you. Keep your eyes closed. Maybe resting your hands on your thighs or your knees. Taking a moment here. Even weight on both sides of your pelvis. Rest one hand on your rib cage again and one on your abdomen. And here see if it is possible to direct more movement with your breath to the rib cage area without creating tension. And then as you create that expansion in the rib cage, you can consider adding movement of the arms, extending over diagonally to the sides, spreading the fingers and then coming back. Opening the arms out as you breathe in and bringing them in as you breathe out. Create a comfortable breathing rhythm for as many inhalations and exhalations as possible without any discomfort. Maybe you imagine something bright behind your forehead. Rest your arms on your thighs or your knees and relax. Feel the weight of your body evenly distributed on your sit bones. And then try this again. Expanding the ribcage, and from there the arms open to the sides, the fingers spreading, and then coming back, creating a nice and smooth flow. Keep your eyes relaxed and closed, maybe imagining soft light behind your forehead, opening the arms with the inhalations and bringing them in with the exhalations, and then rest when you feel that you need to rest. There is no gasping after you finish this. You sit quietly and feel. What are the effects of breathing this way? This may be familiar to you, it may not be. Just noticing. Very relaxed and as comfortable as you can be in this position. Of course, if you need to lie down on the floor, you can do that instead. Observe closely how your body is breathing on its own, as it does around 20,000 times every day. Feeling the sensations that come and go. Just be in this moment, enjoying your own company, being with what is. When the mind gets distracted, just return to feeling the sensations in your body. relaxed and at ease. Remain curious about this unique moment you are in right now. Feeling without internal comment. Notice if there are any places where tension accumulates. You can make adjustments to remain in a steady and easeful posture. Bring the tips of your thumbs to touch, tips of index fingers to touch, tips of middle fingers touch, tips of ring fingers touch, tips of little fingers touch, as if there were a ball between your hands. And you invite a feeling of integration between all of your systems, between all the systems in your body, between your life energy and your awareness. Slowly lengthen your fingers so that the cupped palms of your hands come closer together, inviting a feeling of balance, balance between your receptive and your active tendencies, between all parts of you. And then keeping thumbs and little fingers together, separate index, middle, and ring fingers, opening, inviting an opening of your heart so that you can love yourself unconditionally. Palms of the hands come together. Vow honoring yourself. And then recline back down to the floor to take a few moments to relax, to let go of everything, to let your body digest and absorb this practice. Remember that you are complete and whole. You have always been. Observe the effects of this practice in your body, breathing, mind, and emotional states. Notice what happens when you practice with some regularity, perhaps 2 or 3 times a week. Namaste.